The three-game Thanksgiving NFL DFS slate is always one of the best of the entire year. And yeah, maybe this year's games are not the most exciting, but it's still a pretty fun DFS slate. There are some value plays I kind of like for this week. There are some okay games. There are some young guys you could potentially buy into. So still overall a fun slate to dissect. And of course, a delight even when things don't necessarily go our way. Today, we're going to break down our thoughts on overall small slate strategy. Then we'll go game by game, breaking down overall thoughts in these games and our top DFS plays at each position on FanDuel for your Thanksgiving 2024. Welcome on into the Heat Check, a FanDuel Research podcast. My name is JimSannes. I am the managing editor of FanDuel Research, joined here as I am every week by Brandon Gdula. You can find him on X at Gdula13, on Blue Sky at Gdula. You can find his work at FanDuel Research, where he is a senior managing editor. Brandon, happy Thanksgiving to you. How you doing today?
I'm good. It's a short week. My voice is a little raspy, coming over a sore throat, but just like all these NFL players, we'll prevail. We'll get suited up in time to break down the slate. I mean, it's not quite the same amount of struggle that I'm going through, just a little bit hoarse, but I think we'll be all right. How about you?
Not too bad. I have grown more excited about the slate as the days have gone along, in large part because Caleb Williams has shown life the past couple of games. I think like watching he's looked pretty good. That makes that game more enticing. And then Packers Dolphins actually has quite a bit of playoff implications for the Dolphins are actually still pretty live in the AFC, and Tua's look pretty good. Josh Jacobs looks awesome. So that game is actually pretty decent too. And at least we got some running backs we can discuss for Tommy Cutlets taking on Cooper Rush. So something to talk about in every single game. We're going to go game by game, as mentioned, break down our thoughts on all three of those games and our top DFS plays for the Thanksgiving slate here today. But first, a reminder to make sure you're subscribed to the FanDuel Research podcast feed, wherever you get your podcasts. Easy slip of the tongue there, because we have a 5 podcasts in 3 days week. The NFL betting thoughts of the Thanksgiving slate already posted on this YouTube page. For watching YouTube right now, those thoughts are up there, but also on the Covering the Spread podcast. If you're looking for the main slate NFL DFS discussion, that'll be tomorrow, Wednesday, 2 p.m. Eastern, streamed live on YouTube and then put up on the FanDuel Research podcast feed after the fact. So go to this YouTube page, hit subscribe there, leave us a thumbs up if you like what you hear. And of course, enable notifications to get notified as we go live throughout this week, because it is a hectic week here on the feed. Of course, again, FanDuel Football Betting YouTube page, subscribe there, enable notifications. Tomorrow, 2 p.m. Eastern for the Week 13 main slate overview. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more in the same place where you place your bets. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Must be 21 plus and present in select states. For Kansas, an affiliation with Kansas Star Casino, or 18 plus and present in DC. First online real money wager only. $5 first deposit required. Bonus issued as non-withdrawable bonus bets, which expire 7 days after receipt. Restrictions apply. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit fanduel.com/RG. In Connecticut, call 1-888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org/chat. Visit MD Gambling Health in Oregon, Maryland. Hope is here. Visit gamblinghelplinema.org or call 800-327-5050 for 24/7 support in Massachusetts, or call 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY in New York. Now, Brandon, we'll talk about the 3 games game by game here in just one second. But first, overall, we don't talk a lot of small slates here on the show. We're typically focusing on the large main slate, and a 3-gamer here on tap this weekend. So what alterations in your eyes do we need to make for a small slate on tap for Thursday?
Yeah, I mean, I got some stats and trends from recent Thanksgiving slates that I can run through quickly. I think it'll kind of give us some not every Thanksgiving slate is built the same way, not every 3-game slate is the same. All these teams are on short rest. So that's kind of a factor, but just kind of some high level stuff. I mean, it's get a little bit into the details, but some high level stuff that I think is relevant. The main thing that I kind of wanted to, like, if I had to sum everything up into sort of one bullet point, it would be that we always say on a full slate, it only takes one is not the case. But even on one of these smaller slates, it's still not really the case. So if you go back over Thanksgiving million winning lineups over the last 5 years, well, 6 years since the roster change on FanDuel in 2020, we did not get a 3-game Thanksgiving slate due to COVID postponing Pittsburgh and Baltimore. So basically 5 slates, 5 winning lineups in the Thanksgiving million on FanDuel. If you look at the flex eligible players across those lineups, they averaged a snap rate of 75%, and only 4 players out of those 35 played fewer than 50% of their team snaps to make this, GPP winning lineup. The guys who played under half the snaps, 3 were running backs. 2 of them, basically they scored or had 4+ catches, 20+ receiving yards. So, one of those situations. And the other one was Vernon Davis, who had 73 yards and a touchdown on 2 catches. So basically, just wanted to dispel up front, I think, the main notion where you can kind of get away with punting a position, or, hey, if a tight end has a 3-yard touchdown, like, I'm set. That's not really the case. It's not really how it's been. So that's the main thing for me, is you still want guys, you want to maximize snaps and opportunities, which might not sound groundbreaking, but it is a whole different mindset going from an 11, 12, 13 game slate to 3. You might think you can kind of miss more often. I mean, misses are going to happen. We still want those mistake erasers, but I think overall that's the main thing for me that I want to take away.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. And it's important to get that reinforcement, because we can be tempted by it only takes one kind of mindset. I think the other alteration for me across the 3-game slate is I don't need to be as restrictive with my criteria. We talk a lot on the show about, I still got the tab up here, ignore the floor. And I still want to have a focus on ceiling, because I want guys who can erase mistakes. I want guys who can make a big difference for me and generate a lot of upside. I don't need to be as narrow-minded here, where I can be like we argued for 10 minutes about Keenan Allen on Slack on Sunday. You're like, he should have been the play. And I was like, I would never use Keenan Allen on a full slate. You could not pay me to use him. I'd rather get by a bus. I don't care as much about that on this slate, because I don't need 85 yards or 2 touchdowns out of you in order to be in a difference-making lineup. I think you said 72 was the number, the kind of cutoff for receivers on these Thanksgiving slates. And yeah, that's possible. So I think that for me, I'm more receptive to players who may not have amazing ceilings. Do I want to, if all else is equal, do I prefer ceiling? Absolutely. Yes. But I'm more open to guys who may not have an amazing 90th percentile outcome, because we're not going to get a lot of 90th percentile outcomes on just a 3-game slate.
So while that's true, we still get more upside, I think, than we probably realize. I think what you were referencing was, if you look, there have been 17 wide receivers in Thanksgiving million winning lineups in this stretch that I have data for. That's really the relevant stretch of data. 16 of them had at least 72 receiving yards, which isn't a bad game. You say 85, in a touchdown. We're still kind of getting enough of that. The one player who was below 72 receiving yards, who was in a Thanksgiving million winning lineup, was Adam Thielen, who had 9 catches for 61 yards and a touchdown, and his salary was only $5,900. So
he was Keenan Allen.
In a sense, yeah. But you still do need upside. So again, I think that's the main thing. And just quickly, because we don't want to get bogged too down into here's what happened in the past, here's how it's going to happen moving forward. But another big question here is stacking. How many players from a team do you want to play? Basically, historically, there's only been one team in this stretch that had 4 players in a perfect lineup. So that's totally optimizing everything. And 4 had 3. So I'm not saying you can't play 4. I'm not saying you can't or shouldn't play 3. But there's still enough production across 6 teams where the secret isn't necessarily going to be stacking one team. Now, if the Lions go out and do what they did to the Jaguars and 5 guys have 20 points, sure, that's different. But it's still like we still are looking at every team, every opportunity. You want a ceiling, and that comes from the sort of the best player on different teams, as opposed to 3 guys got 60 yards for Detroit and therefore they were the best. There's going to be more than that. So I think that's kind of what we need to keep in mind as we talk about this 3-game slate.
It's that, and also being more okay with using a defense against your player, like a player you have in your lineup. It's going to be just kind of inherent at this point too. So kind of just slight alterations, but important ones, filling out a lineup for a 3-game slate. Let's now start things off by talking about the first game on Thursday. I think it's the most fun one personally. I'll get your vibe on that in a second, but that is the Bears at the Lions right now at FanDuel Sportsbook. Lions are by 10.5. It's even money to lay the 10.5. So effectively 10 here. Total in this game is 48.5. Key injuries to monitor here that David Montgomery, Amon-Ra St. Brown, and Khalif Raymond all missed practice for the Lions on Monday. Dan Campbell said he was most concerned about Raymond and also left tackle Taylor Decker missing. I am assuming both those guys are out right now based on Campbell's comments. Probably puts Montgomery and St. Brown on the right side of questionable for this game. So Lions heavy favorites, big total here. Caleb Williams showed some life. That's why I like this game, Brandon, overall, is I think that both sides can score points. What's your overall view of Bears at Lions?
Yeah, I like it. It's my favorite game as well, despite the spread. We're really looking at Caleb Williams here, and can he keep this game close? Can he score points? I don't necessarily worry about the Lions putting up points, even if they're not 100%, and they're facing a tough defense. Not that concerned about it. But if you look at quarterback and tight end, there really aren't any standouts in terms of salary. Jared Goff is at the top in terms of quarterbacks at 82, and Jonnu Smith leads tight ends at 63. So it's not like you're going to have so much salary to play with that you can kind of do whatever. It's not really the case. But it brings, you love Jared Goff. I love Jared Goff. We both like Tua. We both like Jordan Love. But you're going to be able to be more receptive to the 3 other quarterbacks on the board. Now,
let's not say 3. Let's not say 3. 3 is a big number. 3 is too big of a number.
2?
No. 1.
Just Caleb?
Yeah.
Okay. We'll talk about that a little bit more, but
I want to enjoy my Thanksgiving, Brandon. I'm not rooting for Cooper Rush and Tommy DeVito. Like, come on, man.
The point here is Caleb Williams in a perfect spot? No, but you're not really contending with someone super likely to put up 35 at quarterback. And frankly, with how Williams has played, in these 2 games with a new offensive coordinator, I think it's appealing. He's got stack candidates. I would say 3, but I'm not opposed to Cole Kmet, whose role is not that great. But again, tight end's kind of iffy overall. I'm sure we're both going to love Jonnu Smith, but basically, point here is all of this was to contextualize and editorialize for the fact that I think Caleb Williams is in the conversation for QB1 once you account for salary.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Caleb Williams' salary on this slate, $7,200. And like you said, that's going to go a long way, because if you look at the running back pool more so than anything else, like we got 3 guys with salaries above 78 or higher who are pretty fun, frankly. And Josh Jacobs, Devon Achane, and Jahmyr Gibbs. I'd like to get it to those guys. Amon-Ra St. Brown, assuming he's healthy, is always pretty fun at $9,000. I think more appealing in this slate than he would be on like a main slate as well. So like I do want to get to studs. I want to get to guys with high salaries, and Williams enables me to get there. Also, I think the key thing, frankly, is the rushing. In 2 games with Thomas Brown at offensive coordinator, he has 9 and 6 rush attempts. He had 4 design runs in that Green Bay game. I didn't check the Minnesota game, but some scrambles there as well. 33 rushing yards in that one.
He'd have 3 because he's at 3.5 per game in that split designed.
Okay. So 3.5 design rushes per game. No rushing touchdowns yet. So like he could have more production, but the fantasy point totals for him have been pretty good. Now he gets to play indoors. Like you said, stack candidates we can feel pretty good about. So I actually do agree with you. I think all things considered, it's between Williams and Jordan Love for QB1 for me on the 3-game slate. So I think we're fully on board here. I don't mind Goff, but I do think that Williams is firmly in that discussion for being the QB1 for me.
Yeah, and I guess the thing we didn't talk about with slate overview is I'm surprised you didn't say more. Maybe you did. Maybe I just missed it. But making assumptions. It's a big.
Yeah. Sorry.
What you do is you make assumptions. You say, okay, what if Detroit scores a ton, but so does Chicago, right? In that event, Caleb Williams and maybe multiple pass catchers are going to have a good game. What if, they get stifled, right? You're going to be down on the entire. So you're basically making, like, in this situation, I think the Bears play from ahead or something like that.
Yeah.
So there are a lot of scenarios where I can see this game being the highest scoring pretty easily, the most fantasy friendly. And the best thing here is, while nobody has like a super dominant target share, there are 3 players who get a good amount of work, specifically Keenan Allen, kind of leading the way in terms of overall targets in relevant games for them of late at a salary of $6,500, coming off of a big game. Which of the pass catchers for the Bears is your favorite? How do you kind of rank them and why?
So it should be Keenan Allen because his like shares are good. 27% target share in the games he has played. This year, DJ Moore 23% of that time, Rome Odunze 20%, so all 3 above 20%. Keenan is second in deep targets behind Rome Odunze, and then also has a 25% red zone share. So it should be Keenan just based on the shares. I still get hung up on the yardage. Last week with his 86 yards on 15 targets, by the way, was the first time this year he has topped 44 receiving yards. That's hideous. I know that like it should be better with the downfield work that he's getting, but like his salary is the highest of this, well, higher than Odunze. He's 65, Odunze 55. That's a tough hang for me. So I think I prefer DJ Moore over Keenan Allen, even though like his shares are worse. The yardage, I know that he can like. I know I just said about like, hey, we don't need to care as much about ceiling, but like DJ Moore has 100 yards twice this year, including this past week. He has gotten 78 yards in another game. I think he's got that juice. And then Odunze saves me a lot of salary, 55. So despite the fact, like, I know I should rank Keenan highest, I still might rank him third of this group just because like Odunze saves me a lot of salary. DJ Moore has yardage upside. So I feel like they give me something that Keenan doesn't. And I guess like, I don't know. Is that dumb? Am I being irrational here?
I don't think you're being irrational, but you have to be receptive to Keenan on a slate like this.
To, yes. I just think the other guys are really good plays. So like, even though I'm ranking him third, I'll still use him.
Yeah, I think the bigger thing here is just noting. So since the week 7 bye, Keenan's got a 28% target share, and a 34% air yard share. Rome Odunze is actually second in target share at 24% with 35% of the air yards. And then DJ Moore is third, yes, but he's still got a 20% target share. The ADOT's not really there. He did score this past week. He can get carries as well. I think that's relevant. I would want to put Rome Odunze first here due to what I'm seeing. Downfield targets, more overall targets of late. We were talking about this on Slack, but Caleb threw for 340 and 2.
Yeah.
And it's like, you tell me that happens and Rome gets
10 targets for
10
Odunze
targets.
too. Yeah.
You're like, yeah, going heavy at Rome Odunze made sense, right? Now, yeah, maybe we get into a certain point where we start calling these prayer yards or whatever. But I think Rome's a great play. At salary, I think he's the best of the 3. But like you said, I like all of them. And with how concentrated these target shares are, by the way, Cole Kmet since the bye 11% target share. It's fine because it's tight end on a slate without a whole lot. But I think Caleb plus 2 pass catchers is, I'm not going to sit here and say that that's my preferred way to start lineups, but it's going to be something I have a lot of due to the fact that you're getting about 40 to 50% of his targets if you go with 2 pass catchers.
I agree with that. So I'm aboard with that as well. Let's talk about the Lions pass catchers, and we'll finish up with the running backs in this game. Sam Laporta's salary $5,700. I think that's the same as JMO. Yeah, Jameson Williams 57. I'm assuming Amon-Ra St. Brown will play. Salary is $9,000. If you look at the games that they have played together, because again, assuming that Amon-Ra is in, he leads in target share at 28%. Jameson Williams 18%. Laporta 13%. JMO leads with a 31% deep target share with Amon-Ra 25%, but then Amon-Ra has a 31% red zone target share, which is absurd. That's kind of like a Cooper Kupp kind of usage for Amon-Ra, like where he doesn't get a lot of deep work, but like the overall volume, the red zone volume is amazing, which is why I do like him despite the $9,000 salary and despite the fact I'm not always as high on him. But I think that honestly, Jameson Williams might be my favorite receiver on the slate, ? 57. He is what he is. He is volatile. He could get me 0 catches, and I know that. I'm going in accepting that as being reality. But a lot of overall targets, a lot of deep targets, pretty tough matchup for Amon-Ra in the slot as well. I think that all adds up to make Jameson Williams 57 a phenomenal play. Like him more than Rome, but I like Rome quite a bit still. So where are you on Jameson Williams first, and then talking about Amon-Ra and Laporta?
Yeah, I mean, Chicago's got some good overall splits against wideouts, but they're actually 29th in ADOT allowed, so average depth of target. That is exactly what we want. Jameson Williams at home, indoors, against a team that can allow a high ADOT. I can't really talk you out of having Jameson Williams as the wide receiver one at that salary. So I'm with you. Like, yeah, Roma Dunes is getting more targets, but the offensive expectations are much higher for Detroit. No, like Khalif Raymond's banged up. Amon-Ra St. Brown, probably not 100%. David Montgomery, not 100%, but like you said, we're expecting him to play. Could see just more work funneled his way, I think, at a certain point. And I don't really have a case against it. As for, who'd you ask me again?
Amon-Ra and Laporta.
Yeah. So, look, Amon-Ra St. Brown, sure. I have nothing bad to say about him. He can have 2 touchdowns. He can have 111 yards on 10 catches. Sure. It's hard to prioritize him over the running backs. Agreed. So that's kind of where I'm going. He's going to be a key part of lineups when I do play Jared Goff, because I'm assuming Goff throws for 3 or 4 touchdowns, and I want Amon-Ra as part of that. Don't really want to play like the Laporta, Goff, Jameson too often, although almost like anything's viable. A lot of things are more viable this week. But if I'm going with Amon-Ra, I'm more likely to make sure I'm playing Goff with him in hopes that there are the multiple touchdowns here. Laporta, he's definitely in it. He's got a good matchup on paper. Chicago's 28th in ADOT, 29th in yards per route run allowed, 2 opposing tight ends. I don't have as good of a feel, I'll say, on Laporta as you do. Maybe just not as much optimism, but you're getting a favorite indoors, a guy who can get touchdowns. So I'm not against it, but where is Laporta for you in the context of tight end 1?
Yeah.
Over Jonnu?
Yeah. Because my mentality on larger slates, I think this does translate to smaller slates too, is I want to target tight ends with the highest implied team total I can get. And it cannot get any higher than what the Lions is. They're going to get a lot of touchdown chances. Sam Laporta is involved enough in the offense. So his salary is 57. I'm getting a massive implied team total. I'm getting access to the most efficient quarterback on the slate. It's indoors. It's my favorite game on the slate. I think that all the factors line up. And again, he's involved enough. 6 targets in consecutive games. Only 19 yards this past week, but 66. He had a bunch of deep targets in that game where he got hurt as well. So he's my tight end 1. I am typically higher on Laporta than you, so I'm not super surprised. And I understand your skepticism. I think that's fair. But I do think that there's enough here to make him my tight end 1 for this week.
I mean, I think at worst he's tight end 2 process-wise behind Jonnu.
Yeah.
Because Jonnu Smith is leading his team in target share in recent games. I don't want to lose sight of that. But no, I mean, it's like I said, it's a good on paper matchup for Laporta. So I'm not really against it. I'm not going to push back too much. So, yeah, I mean, I think it's going to come down to how much Goff I get to.
Yeah.
But playing Laporta with Caleb Williams is totally fine, of course.
And that will be happening for me quite a bit. Let's talk about the running backs here again. Assuming that David Montgomery is in. If he's not, you just put Jahmyr Gibbs in every lineup. I think we don't need to analyze that too much. You just put him in every lineup and figure it out from there. But I think that's pretty simple. Let's assume that Monty plays. I still think that Gibbs is RB 1B on the slate, with Josh Jacobs being the 1A at that point.
Yeah, I was gonna say 1.5, but yeah, I mean the same thing. So
yeah, I mean, looking at the games he's played with David Montgomery this year, he is still at 104.6 yards from scrimmage per game. That's still the top mark on the slate. Josh Jacobs with Jordan Love's at 1 to 3.4. It's right behind him. Slightly better red zone share for Jacobs too, which is why I would make Jacobs the 1A. But Gibbs has immense yardage upside. The Bears been a bit leaky against the rush. They're down to 17th in schedule adjusted rush defense, according to Number Fire's metrics. And I just like watching Jahmyr Gibbs play football. So I'm going to let that factor in here at some point. So $8,400 from me. Sounds like we're on the same page where he is in every lineup, but there's no Montgomery. And if there is Montgomery, we still put him in a healthy number. Any additional thoughts for you on Gibbs?
No. Bears are 5th worst by rushing yards over expectation per carry allowed to running backs. So you want exposure to that. I think the Montgomery situation is really interesting because if he plays, I don't expect him, like Gibbs, they kind of yo-yo snaps, but Gibbs has been.
They trade series. And so it just depends on like whose series will end up being longer, basically.
Yeah. So you'd think they spare Montgomery a little bit. It's probably good for Laporta too, for touchdown equity possibilities. But yeah, Gibbs without Montgomery, I'd play him in every lineup and just figure it out from there. Gibbs with Montgomery at worst, like RB2, I think, on the board. So yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Montgomery, let's assume that he plays. Salary 76. Obviously, 2 scores are well within his range of outcomes. Salaries come down, which does help, I think, quite a bit. So I'd still use him. I'd want to keep him probably in like the 20%-ish range at that point. Frankly, if he gets full by Wednesday, I don't hate the idea of having both him and Gibbs in the same lineup, just because like they used to be like magnets for each other, where like their total yards is going to be like identical every single week. It's not the case much anymore where Gibbs has widened that gap, but like I'd still use Montgomery 20-ish% if we get him full by Wednesday. What about you?
Yeah, still really appealing on a slate like this. Makes way more sense. A lot easier to justify. Take the flaws, and just roll with them. So I could see myself playing, whenever I'm stacking a different game, which is most likely going to be the late game, just if I'm being honest, and you play just Montgomery, you say, what if Montgomery scores twice, someone else has a touchdown, but it's a kind of slowish slugfest, but Montgomery's the best lion. That there's a reality where that happens. So I like Montgomery plenty. I think 20% is about right for me.
Also a revenge game. Forgot about that. Revenge game for David Montgomery against the Bears. DeAndre Swift at 67, his red zone role sucks. I know that like that's not as big of a focus here as it would be for other things, but like he can't buy a red zone carry. If you look at the games that he has played this year, he has just a 22% red zone share. Like this slate is full of a lot of guys with red zone concerns, but his is the worst among the relevant guys. I'm pretty low on him personally. I know he's had some like impressive individual plays since the coordinator change, but I also think that those have been kind of fluky, and that's why I'm not like super, super high on him. Roschon Johnson is getting only red zone rush attempts, so like I can't get there either. So frankly, of the position groups on this slate, the Bears running backs are the ones where I have the least appeal or least draw, least enthusiasm. How are you feeling about Swift?
Yeah, I mean, Swift, the salary's a bit...
revenge game. Sorry, I forgot. Also revenge game for him. Yeah. My bad.
Yeah. But the salary is a bit high for the role coming down as much as it is. I do think, again, you you still want to make optimal plays. You don't want to like load up on players who may or may not get to 50% of the snaps, but Roschon Johnson has that 2 touchdown game in him at 57. And that's kind of what you're looking for if you're not playing a ton of snaps. So again, it's kind of a differentiation piece in lineups where you're like, okay, I think Caleb doesn't throw a ton, or maybe he's just rushing, gets the goal line opportunities, and then there's Roschon. But that's like 5-10% kind of getting different there for me.
Any final thoughts for you on this game?
I don't think so.
Okay, let's move on to the second game then. That is the New York Giants at the Dallas Cowboys. Right now, FanDuel Sportsbook, Cowboys favored by 3.5, and the total in this game is currently sitting at 37.5. So the lowest in the slate by a full 10 points, understandably so, given that is Tommy DeVito taking on Cooper Rush. In this game, key injuries to note are the Jake Ferguson missed practice again on Monday due to a concussion. Cooper Rush limited with a knee injury, but still should be good to go. Tommy DeVito left briefly in week 12, which I thought meant he had to be listed in the injury report, and he was not. So I guess that means he's okay. Either that or the Giants forgot to include him on the injury report, but should mean that he's going to start this week. So give me your thoughts on this game, Brandon. How you feel about the Giants and the Cowboys in the context of a 3-game DFS slate?
Yeah, so now is kind of whenever I can talk more about like how many players are in the perfect lineup, that kind of stuff. From like, there's a low implied team total here. It's not like it's high for either team, but there's a good chance that no Giant really makes the optimal. Wouldn't surprise us by any means. Don't know who it would be. Tyrone Tracy, they want him to be the guy. He can't really take care of the ball enough to be the guy. So there's a reality where he plays an 80% snap rate, doesn't fumble, has a great game. I don't know what the odds of that are. Not that high to me. So I don't like you got to make a case. Yeah. Tell yourself a story, but I don't know that this is the week. Malik Neighbors didn't get a first half target last week, ended with 9 targets for 64 yards. He's got an immense ceiling if he just gets peppered, but I don't know how you kind of get there. Like Theo Johnson's running routes, if you want to kind of, I don't want to say punt tight end, but get a little bit different. Sure. I don't know, man. This is the one quarterback I'm not going to play for sure. I probably won't get the rush either, but who here do we like?
So I do like Tracy. I do like Neighbors, just because like they're both guys who can get me a palatable score. Tracy last week had his lowest snap rate by a good margin since Devin Singletary returned. You mentioned the fumble. He had another fumble. It was on kind of like a gadgety play, so I'm curious if they punish him less as a result of that. I doubt it, based on the way coaches operate. And also his snap rate could have been low because they knew they had a divisional game against a team they don't like coming up Thursday. That's kind of narrative-y. I still think his snap rate will be under 60%. So that's kind of where I'm operating here. But at the same time, he is a very talented player facing a bad defense. There are paths to him paying off. So if you're talking to me about would I rather use DeAndre Swift or Tyrone Tracy, I'm probably going to lean towards Tracy there, just because, even though I like that game a lot more, just because I think Tracy's a better football player and a better matchup. So I prefer Tracy over Swift. Do you agree with that ranking of him?
Yeah, it's also matchup, like just rushing matchup based.
Yeah.
Dallas, not good. 32nd in EPA per carry allowed to back. So I'm going Tracy over Swift. He's got his own problems, but the chances he has a feature role are now higher than DeAndre Swift.
I agree with that as well. As far as Neighbors goes, as you know, I've been pretty low on him all year. There's a bit of a squeaky wheel narrative here because he could play to halftime. That's why he got 9 targets in the second half this past week. And then the post-game locker room, nobody's ever looked cooler than Malik Neighbors looked in his post-game interview. He's wearing like these really cool sunglasses indoors. So like he looked pretty cool. I don't know if that's like playing a role here. But like, if you tell me like, hey, Malik Neighbors went off for 100 yards and 2 touchdowns on Thanksgiving, I'd be like, yeah, okay, that makes sense. And it's like easy for me to see that path. Am I going to have a lot of Malik Neighbors in my lineups? Absolutely not. because I would rather prioritize Jahmyr Gibbs, rather prioritize Josh Jacobs in similar salary ranges. I'd rather get up to Amon-Ra if I'm going to be in this range, but like, I'd still like to get some Malik Neighbors in there just because like I can kind of envision it. I don't think I'll use any other Giants pass catchers. Maybe Theo Johnson. Sure. I get your shout out there, but we love Darius Slate on this podcast. He's getting no work right now. Wan'Dale Robinson in the games that Malik Neighbors has played has a 24% overall target share. He is at 2.5% of the deep work. Does get a lot of red zone targets, but frankly, how often will they be there? So I'm not going to use Wan'Dale. His salary is $100 lower than Jameson Williams, which is a slap in the face, frankly. So I don't think I'll use any other pass catchers. It'll be just Tracy, just Neighbors. Tracy probably about 30-ish%, Neighbors 15, I'd like somewhere in there. Theo Johnson, if I have to, is kind of my view of the Giants players, I guess.
Yeah, and for diligence here, Jalen Hyatt he ran two more routes than Darius Slayton last week.
It's a crime.
Why didn't they trade him?
I know he was concussed at the trade deadline, but like give Darius Slayton to a team that deserves him, please. He's a good football player.
Slayton was on the field for every red zone snap last week, so there's that. But like you said, again, it's diligence. It's if you have to, I guess, but like Slayton or Roma Dunze, I know there's game theory involved with popularity, but come on.
Dunze by 16 miles.
Yeah, and again, it goes back to Jalen Hyatt could have really a 60-yard touchdown. He might not even make the optimum. Correct. Maybe at that salary of 46 he could, but like
sure,
he needs to get targeted first.
Let's talk about the Cowboys then. Rico Dowdle's salary $6,100. He is the top back in this team right now, which is encouraging. Looked pretty good in that game last week. No touchdowns, but 98 yards from scrimmage. If you look at the games he's played with Cooper Rush, Dowdle averaging 62.7 yards in scrimmage. Part of that was because they've gotten torched in two of those games, got benched late in the game against the Eagles, but like they've kind of committed to him. So Dowdle or Tracy for you?
I think I would lean Dowdle here.
I think I agree. So maybe I need to bump my Tracy 30% down a little bit. It might have been a bit.
Yeah. High. So I was nervous that Rico Dowdle kind of played his way out of this starting role that they said he was in against the Texans. But his snap rate was up to 64% last week. It was 49% the week prior. He's not going to be a flawless back, but he's going to get carries. He can see some targets. I think he's a pretty good football player overall, and it is a really good matchup. The Giants are 31st in EPA per carry, 30th in rushing success rate allowed to running backs, also 31st in yards per route run. Dowdle should have higher offensive expectations than the Giants. So, and I guess just technically fewer concerns. Like, I don't think Dowdle's, I know the irony here. I think Dowdle's less likely to be benched or subbed out as much as Tracy. So I would lean Dowdle, but still I can't get over the skis for Dowdle. But he'd probably be like a 40%er, I think, for me.
I can't push back on that. I think that makes sense. And I do like him a decent amount too. CeeDee Lamb's getting a lot of work from Cooper Rush, salary $8,600. In the games with Cooper Rush starting, it is a 30% target share for Lamb, only 19% of the deep targets. Like they're peppering him underneath, which is getting him catches. Also, it's a 50% red zone share on a very small sample, but this is a big number, the catch numbers for Lamb, because they're just getting him short targets, they're getting the ball in his hands and kind of letting him do what he does. And I remember like back in college, like Lamb, I always thought of him as like a running back after the catch because he was so dynamic. There's like, he can blow up without deep targets. So we're looking at these higher salaried receivers, those being CeeDee Lamb, Malik Neighbors, Amon-Ra St. Brown. Where does Lamb settle in for you in that hierarchy of the higher salaried receivers?
It's tough. He's going to get the volume. I feel better about his chances of getting volume than even Malik Neighbors.
Yeah.
Just due to the fact they don't have really anyone else they throw the ball to.
His quarterback Lamb also has too.
Yeah. Lamb also has a carry in 4 straight games, 5 carries in that 4-game sample. They want to try to get him the ball. They're able to. This is the type of matchup, frankly. New York is 30th in catch rate over expectation allowed. Kind of limits some downfield passing, but like you said, he's not really getting that. So CeeDee Lamb getting underneath work, getting carries, pretty appealing. I just still don't know, frankly, as I'm building lineups, how frequently I'm going to get to one of these stud receivers.
Yeah.
So it's more about, once again, it's been the case, I'm sure, on every Thanksgiving slate, where prioritizing the running backs over receivers, but double-digit targets in 2, 4, 6 straight. Like, I know it's not exactly accurate with the new quarterback, but he's still getting peppered. So I think you could do worse. But if I'm getting up there, you have to prioritize Amon-Ra over CeeDee Lamb, right?
Oh, yeah, totally. So I think so too. Just because like offensive expectations, stuff like that. So I agree with that too. I'm not going to get to Jalen Tolbert. I think he's a talented football player, but Brandon Cook sounds like he might play. They said on Monday that they expect to activate him from IR for Thursday's game. I'm not getting there either. I think it's really like if Dak were healthy, I'd consider Tolbert or Cooks.
Yeah,
but he's not. So I don't want to use those guys. What's that?
He's getting his cardio in. I mean, we didn't talk about Tim Patrick at 51.
Oh, shoot. We didn't. You're right.
No.
I'd use Tim Patrick a bit. Yeah.
So, like, basically, Jalen Tolbert and Tim Patrick are the guys in the low fives. I guess Slayton as well. Like, running, but not to the same degree. Running elevated routes, not getting a ton of work. Tim Patrick did get some nice looks, and he's in a good offense, but would you go Jalen Tolbert or Tim Patrick?
Tim Patrick. Again, offensive expectations.
It's kind of wild because Tolbert's the second option, I guess, technically. But
Tim Patrick is the fifth.
But it's hard to push back on that.
Yep. I think that's kind of go with the team that's going to score more points. And I think Tolbert, again, is a good football player, just not the right setup for him. No Cooks for me either. Kevontae Turpin stacked to the Dallas Cowboys defense. Yay or nay? Turpin, another kickoff return touchdown this past week, had the long receiving touchdown against the Texans. He's kind of the it only takes one kind of guy. I'll do one Turpin stacked to the Cowboys defense lineup to be cheeky. But like from a process perspective, if I have a single lineup, he's not sniffing it.
It is bad. It is bad process. He's not going to play close to 50% of the snaps. He ran 6 routes last. Like, sure, it's not the worst thing because you can try to double dip, but I'm probably not getting there.
Yep, I hear you. Okay, so if we assume that Jake Ferguson does not go, Luke Schoonmaker is at least somewhat viable, $5,000 for him. He had 10 targets in the first game where Ferguson left midway, and then 4 targets last week, 55 yards and a touchdown. He's gotten yardage. He's had rush in both those games. Do you prefer Schoonmaker or Theo Johnson, or is it not worth discussing because we got other low-salary tight ends at our disposal here?
Probably not super worth it, but again, it's diligence here. I'd go Schoonmaker over Johnson.
I tend to agree. So I think I would go there as well. Okay. Any final thoughts for you on Cowboys versus Giants?
Any Cooper Rush?
No.
Okay. I'm leaning towards
if it burns me, it burns me.
Correct.
Here we are. So let's talk about the final game on the slate. That is the Miami Dolphins visiting the Green Bay Packers right now at FanDuel Sportsbook. The Packers are favored by 3.5. Total in this game is 47.5. There is some wind in this one. This is the lone outdoor game on the slate. 10-mile-per-hour winds, low temperatures in Green Bay for this one. The lone injury of note is that Romeo Doubs probably going to sit out this week because he has a pretty gnarly concussion that he suffered late in the game. He was playing really well too, which stinks. Specifically last week, he looked good. So bummer for Doubs to be out this game. Could open up some targets for the Packers pass catchers. I want to get your overall read on this game before I tell you my read on this game. How do you view it overall, like holistically?
I like it. I think it's in a tier of its own behind Chicago and Detroit, and clearly a tier above New York and Dallas. But I don't think it's really... It's kind of strange to say. It's a 2-quarterback game, but there's wind. Miami does play slow. It's cold temperatures. Tua doesn't have a lot of games in cold temperatures. Not gonna look at splits, but just due to volume, Just not a whole lot there for him to dig into. We have I don't know. I don't want to say it's been a long time for Tyreek Hill with the squeaky wheel, but things don't feel quite right. And I don't want to jump at like, oh, well, he finally said something, so he's going to get more work. I think that stuff's kind of been there a little bit, and hasn't led to anything amazing. Of course, he's one of and I can't lose sight of the fact that Tyreek Hill is one of the few players with torches the slate upside. Yeah. Don't want to lose sight of that. We've got Jalen Waddle coming off of a huge game. His salary's still low, but his role wasn't like phenomenal necessarily. Like it was better, but it wasn't like, oh, he's, in conversation for like Jonnu Smith leads this team in target share since Tua's been back. Like, we have to keep that in mind. So, and then even you take Romeo Doubs out, the Packers still have 5 guys who can catch passes. So I like it, but I just don't like it as much. Tell me where you are.
So you seem to not like it because of market shares. I don't like it because of some of the things you alluded to there. Wind is one. 10-mile-per-hour winds matter. Pace matters. And both defenses are currently top 10 in number fire schedule adjusted metrics. So like both defenses are playing pretty well. I took the under in this game. 47.5 minus 115 for those reasons. I've got it at 44.5. So like I've got it pretty well below because I took the over on the Detroit Chicago game too. So like from my numbers, I've got this as being a lot bigger gap than what the market has for this one. So I think external factors actually push it down as well. So I think we're on the same page, different reasons, but like same page for being lower on this game. I want to talk about Hill specifically quick though. $7,800. You mentioned that Jonnu leads in targets since Tua returned. That is true. He is at 21%, Tyreek 19, Devon Achane 17, Waddle 16%. Deep targets still favor Hill at 43%. Waddle's at 29% there. And Hill also does lead in red zone targets at 27%. So you mentioned he's the guy who can kind of burn us for not using him. I think that's why I want to go there, especially under the assumption that because Waddle went nuts, because Waddle's salary is $1,500 lower than Hill's, because there's this narrative that Tyreek is dust with his wrist injury, I think if I have a single lineup, I kind of want Tyreek in it. Is that dumb? Kind of want to get a vibe check on that for you.
No, I don't think it's dumb. Okay. It's not like Hill's role is kind of like Jalen Waddle's was entering last week, where he had a 13% target share. Like, he's going to get downfield work. It's not the best game for a lot of back and forth. Green Bay kind of average in ADOT allowed, but pretty good overall at limiting receivers. So what you're saying is, if you're playing like a single entry tournament, Tyreek Hill, yeah, like light bulb comes on, Hill makes a ton of sense. If you go back to, I'm trying to build the best, safest lineup I can to try to. He's not in that. So
yeah, I agree. Yeah,
I agree with you. I'm probably going to be under exposed to Hill from what I want to be due to the fact that I'll have to go out of my way to get there.
Sure.
And that still scares me. So I think that tells me enough.
Okay. Let's talk about Waddle. Salary $6,300, and let's lump Jonnu in there too. Jonnu's salary also $6,300. Both those guys coming off big games. That's going to jack up their roster rates, which matters. And again, a bit lower on this game overall. So I think if I have like a single lineup, probably not getting to either. A single entry tournament lineup, I should say. If I have a single entry tournament lineup, probably not going to get to either Waddle or Jonnu, just because, like, again, I prefer Laporta for that kind of format. Tight end. For Waddle, I prefer JMO. I prefer JMO. And probably Adunze as well for that kind of format. Where are you on Waddle and Jonnu, again, from a tournament perspective, considering salaries, considering game environment, stuff like that?
I still like Jonnu. I think he has, within the context of tight end, some slate altering upside.
Sure, actually,
because
that's fair.
He can get yardage. He's getting yardage. He's getting a lot of red zone work of late. The salary does not fully account for what his ceiling is. And again, I don't want to I don't think long term the plan for Miami is to have Jonnu Smith lead them in targets, but it's been a long enough sample where it's like, this is relevant. So 463, that's pretty appealing. Sure. And it's a good overall matchup against the Packers, against tight ends. They're 28th in yards per route run allowed to tight ends. So I kind of like Jonnu over Waddle with the assumption that everyone plays Waddle. I'm not against Jalen Waddle. It's kind of a galaxy brain take just to avoid someone. I'm not avoiding him. I'm just pointing out that Jonnu Smith still had more targets than Jalen Waddle did. Waddle had a lot of downfield work. 5 out of his 9 targets last week were at least 10 yards downfield, but only 1 incompletion. He had a 23%, technically 22.5% target share for 144 yards and a touchdown. His first 100-yard game since week 1. I don't think everything is magically fixed. I think it's better, but this is not like a no-brainer, can't miss. I think the real sort of question for Waddle isn't, do you prefer Jonnu or Waddle? It's, if you play Tua, Waddle and Jonnu, play them both together, because like you point out all the time, if you're playing Tua, you're expecting him to throw 3 or 4 touchdowns. That's kind of what you're looking for. Yeah. That still works out. Bigger question for me is like Jalen Waddle or Keenan Allen?
Waddle.
Like, I think I'm leaning Waddle as well, even though the target share numbers much prefer
You
Keenan
found my
Allen.
breaking point by asking Keenan Allen, so.
But not to jump ahead, but maybe this is the time for it. Jalen Waddle or Christian Watson if there's no Romeo Doubs.
I would still go Waddle there, but I do want to use Watson this week. Let's talk about him, and let's talk about the rest of the Packers pass catchers as well. Watson's salary $6,000, Jaden Reed $69,000, and Tucker Kraft checking in at $5,500. Again, assuming that there's no Romeo Doubs for this week. Let's look at the Packers target shares. Let's look at since Christian Watson returned. So Doubs has played in every single game here. In that time, though, Doubs is a 20% target share. Watson's actually second on the team at 16%. Jaden Reed, 14%. Tucker Kraft, 12%. Dontavian Wicks is at 10%. But Watson's a 38% deep target share. I know that, like, we make the joke prayer yards. Do they count as prayer yards when it bounces off your face? Like, what is the ruling on that? Because, like, usually prayer yards is, like, a slanderous term for a quarterback, but, like, it bounced off his head. Like, this has happened with him before. This is not new. But also, like, he has 3 deep targets in 3 consecutive games. He's getting a lot of deep work, and we just saw him go nuts. He had 150 yards 2 games ago. He could do that again on Thursday, and if he does, for $6,000, that's pretty sick. So I prefer Waddle over Watson, but, like, I actively want to get Watson in, like, some lineups because I know that his range of outcomes is sick. How do you feel about Watson? Then talking about Reed and Kraft after that.
I think at salary, assuming no Doubs, Watson's in the conversation for wide receiver 1, or the wide receiver. The wide receiver I might have the most. It feels so scary looking at the target totals, but he's like eternally banged up, but he's. I can't believe the $150 followed up by 0 in terms of the yardage there.
Just classic. We got the full Christian Watson experience in a 2-game sample. You got to respect it.
You're assuming he should lead in targets. If the target leader's out, we assume he's going to lead in downfield targets because he already is, in air yards because he already is. 6,000. This game, while I have it a tier lower, is still a tier above that third game. So it is a bit of an assumption, but a lot is telling me that Christian Watson makes a lot of sense for this slate. Where would he rank, no Doubs, at salary within the context of the full slate?
JMO would be above him. Jameson Williams, 57. Prefer him.
But
I actually do prefer Jaden Reed at 69. So, like, I would probably rank Reed above him. And I'd consider DJ Moore above him as well.
Okay.
So he's not, I'm a little bit lower on him than you are, but I understand the case for it. Let me talk about Jaden Reed, though.
Yeah.
$6,900. Obviously the target shares are not amazing, but he does get some rush attempts and he does get downfield work as well. It's obviously not like a ton for Reed. You'd like a lot more. And it's been pretty poor recently, but like, I don't want to assume that what he's done recently is going to be what he will do going forward, because like he is a dynamic football player who has gotten 100 plus yards in 3 separate games already this year. And I believe Watson played in all those games. I think the Minnesota game's the game he got hurt in. And Dobbs played in that game too. He had 100 yards in Brazil and then 100 yards against Detroit as well. So like in terms of like upside, Jaden Reed's got it. Salaries come down. He was in like in the upper 7,000 range, which was way too high, but it's come down. And I know he can give me some rush attempts, know that they want the ball in his hands. I know that if Dobbs is out, probably going to lead to a bit more for Jaden Reed. So I think that like I don't know, if I'm trying to get in the brain of LaFleur, I'm probably leaning towards getting Reed more involved. So I like Watson, but I think I prefer Jaden Reed. Where are you on Reed at 69?
Like I get it, but Watson's been running more routes. It's about the same lately, but we've seen things kind of level out between the two. I know what you're saying, but Reed was involved and it kind of fell off a bit.
Mm-hmm.
That's not great. And now Watson's getting healthier and is getting more involved. So to rank Reed above Watson is a little more wishful thinking that they'll use him more like they did, which they should. I want them to, but for 900,
we've seen them do it in the past though as well. So it's not like it's coming out of nowhere, I guess.
Correct. However, what we're seeing now is Christian Watson getting more involved as well.
Yeah.
So,
but the gap since Watson returned is a 16% target share versus 14%. So it's not a huge gap. It's splitting hairs, I think.
Yes, I'm not saying.
And Reed is more likely to get rush attempts too, which are somewhat.
Who's more likely to get 5-6 downfield targets?
Watson more likely to get 5 or 6 downfield targets. Who is more likely to get me 80 yards? All things 80 yards in scrimmage, all things considered.
I think it's relatively equal.
Okay.
And it's a 900 in savings. So point being, we like these two a good amount. I'm not going to argue because I like Jaden Reed just fine. I know I'm building lineups over here. I know what that 900 in savings does.
Okay.
What about the other?
Is it tough?
If you want to play Achane, Gibbs, and Josh Jacobs, you're dancing in this mid 5s to mid 6s tier. It's hard to get up to Jaden Reed. You can do it. But if I can get those 3 running backs and play Christian Watson instead of Jaden Reed,
sure, that's
appealing.
That makes sense. Tucker Kraft's salary $5,500. It seems like whenever one of them is out, he's fine. Like he'll be okay. Had a touchdown this past week, which is kind of annoying. Kind of wish he hadn't, frankly. Pretty impressive touchdown too, I thought, on that one. Kraft's overall involvement is not good. He's kind of got a similar case to Laporta though, where it's like, okay, I assume the Packers score a lot of points. I use Jordan Love at quarterback. I'll put Tucker Kraft in there because why not? That's kind of the case for him, which is not an amazing case, but like, so I prefer Laporta, but like Kraft checks a lot of the same boxes. If I'm ranking all tight ends in the slate, I think that Tucker Kraft is my tight end 3 with Laporta 1, Jonnu 2. I put Kraft 3. Would you agree?
So spell it out for me again.
I've got Laporta 1, Jonnu 2, Kraft 3.
I go Jonnu 1, Laporta 2, Kraft 3.
Okay.
But Miami lets up the highest target per route rate to tight ends. They've got good underlying numbers, but you could see things.
Hunter Henry get more last week? Freaking Austin Hooper catching a touchdown. It's a white tight end down the field, and I'm like, oh, cool, Hunter Henry. And it's like,
So I think Kraft is 3 by a pretty good margin. I agree with
that too.
I would like to keep my tight end exposure to those 3, maybe Cole Kmet,
sure,
in Caleb lineups, but
exactly.
We good?
Yep. I was agreeing with you.
Okay. Well, you stopped. I thought maybe we're talking running backs next.
Okay, let's talk about running backs. If I say to you, Devon Achane's salary is 9,000, let's put that out there. Josh Jacobs, 78. I think we both agree that the top 3 running backs in the slate are Devon Achane, Jahmyr Gibbs, and Josh Jacobs. If I say, Brandon, you got to jump off one of those guys, who is it?
That's a tough one. Are we assuming Montgomery plays?
Yes. Because then it's not a question. Then it's, yeah.
Well, no, it'd still be a question. Because Gibbs wouldn't be the one taken out.
Correct.
I'm probably going to say Achane, though.
I agree.
His role's good. He's going to get pass catching work. It's not like a phenomenal on paper matchup exactly. I still have some concerns over the fact that, he's a featured back, but he can lose some carries. He's going to lose some carries. They want to get other backs involved. You're kind of banking on the receiving work being there. So I say Achane has the highest ceiling of the 3 more often than not. I could still kind of say that in terms of like a 90th percentile outcome. But he's the one I'm really high on Josh Jacobs. It's not chasing the 3 touchdown game. We've been talking about his role being good. We were there last week.
Yes.
So Achane is the most likely to be kicked out, and the salary being the highest also helps with that conversation.
So that's one reason. I have 3 other reasons why Achane is the guy kicked out.
That's a lot.
That's not to say he's still the firm RB3 for me. Other reasons are I have the lowest offensive expectations for the Dolphins compared to the Lions and the Packers. His number 3 is his yards from scrimmage are lower than Gibbs and Jacobs in their most relevant sample. Gibbs 104.6, Jacobs 103.4, and then Achane 96.8. This is in the games with Tua. Tua full, so omitting the Bills game where he got hurt mid-game. That's number 3. Number 4 is, and I think this is actually an important note, he has the lowest odds to get a 100-yard bonus because he's at 54.3 rushing yards per game, 42.5 receiving, whereas Gibbs at 80.5 rushing and Jacobs at 83.3 rushing. I think that matters, frankly.
Yeah.
So like, yes, I like him, and yes, I'd like to get to 9,000. But if you're like, hey, Jim, if you dump out of Achane, you can get to a fun receiver you like instead. I'm kind of okay with that, I guess. So I like him. I'd like to use him, but he's pretty clearly number 3 for me behind both Gibbs and Josh Jacobs.
So my question then is, if you're swapping off of Achane, right, to a receiver, it's not who's that receiver. It's do you like another running back enough to flex a third running back, or are you looking at who? So, all right, percentage wise, how many of your lineups are you going to have a running back flex?
Good number, because I'll probably have the big 3 in a lot of lineups of Achane, Gibbs, and Jacobs, and then I'll still have some Tracy, some Dowdle mixed in there as well. So a pretty good number, frankly.
Yeah. So I agree. Also Montgomery's in that conversation if he plays.
Yeah, totally. Yes.
So
thank you.
The question was more like, okay, we want Jacobs, we want Gibbs. If you're taking out Achane to get to Tyreek, make that Dolphin to Dolphin swap. It was more, how are you looking to sort of fill that flex? I kind of agree with you where Dowdle and Tracy would take priority, but I'm definitely not against. I don't want to flex a second tight end. There's not really enough tight ends to want to do that.
Right.
Maybe Laporta and Jonnu, but I'd be more likely to consider flexing a higher salaried receiver and have 4 receivers, because we have like 3 or 4 names in the low 6,000 upper 5s that we would want to play. So,
I mean, flexing a receiver would allow me to get a double stack with Caleb of like a Dunze and DJ Moore. Yep. I can get to JMO or Amon-Ra and then still get Jaden Reed, Christian Watson, Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, one of those guys in that lineup too. So I think it kind of depends on like the game stack that I have. Like if I'm going heavy at the Lions Bears games, that's going to increase the odds that I have a receiver in the flex, because I'm probably going to want 2 receivers with a good number of those stacks.
Yeah. So again, I think the main thing here is we still want to prioritize flexing a running back in most cases. I think the default is going to try to be getting to the big three running backs. You're kind of boxed in with what you can do from there. I think it's going to be a popular construction. But if swapping off of Achane, who's the most likely back we're going to swap off of, I still want to go Dowdle, some Tracy, probably not really Swift or Roschon as much. But again, I still think the default is going to be wanting to get to that running back.
I agree with you there. Let's talk about the quarterbacks. Jordan Love, his salary checks in at a very respectable $7,500. Tua Tagovailoa, $8,000. Both these guys are playing good football right now. I know Love has weird mistakes, but I still think he's playing good football overall. Tua is like hyper efficient right now. Like he's been awesome. The reason I'm not like slobbering over Tua is, again, outdoor game, 10-mile-per-hour winds. It's cold, which might matter at a certain point. Salary is $8,000. So I like Tua. He was very, very kind to me this past week, where we were heavy on him in DFS, came through. I think he's quarterback 4. Like I put Caleb and I put Love above him. And I think I put Goff above Tua too, just because of offensive expectations. Where does Tua settle in for you in the context of quarterback?
I think he might be 4 as well.
Okay.
We didn't really talk about Goff to a heavy extent, but he's in a good spot to produce. Tua, outdoors, wind, cold. It's not like he can't play well in those conditions. Right. It's that we haven't seen it a lot. It's not the best matchup. Also coming off of 7 touchdowns over his last 2 games. That's great. But regression will probably come. It was sort of due in the first place, but just keeping that in mind as well. 8,000 is a bit much. Now we have Jordan Love without potentially one of his top pass catchers, but the Packers have like 9 guys that they'll rotate in. Bo Melton can make plays. Who scored? Malik Heath scored. Like, I don't really think he's going to have such a big efficiency downgrade. He just actually makes it a little bit easier to stack. So I like Jordan Love a little bit more than Tua.
Yeah, I agree with you on Love. Again, I think that he's in discussion with Caleb as being the quarterback 1 on this slate, just because like he's probably going to sling it a good amount. They didn't throw against the Niners, but they didn't have to in that game. And like I think the Dolphins should put up more of a fight in this game. I think that's positive as well. $7,500 for Jordan Love. That's come down quite a bit from where it was. I do think that he's pretty enticing for this week. The more I think about it, though, the more I think I do put Caleb above him. I don't mind Love, but I think I do lean towards Caleb there.
I am at this point, yes, due to the rushing.
Okay. Any other thoughts for you on this game specifically?
Don't think so.
Okay. So before we close up, I'm going to say, Brandon, I am granting to you as the single entry genie 1 single entry tournament lineup for the 3-game Thanksgiving DFS slate. Who are you stacking? Who are your priorities for that slate? And it doesn't have to be an entire like who are the players you're like, who are you locking in first here?
Josh Jacobs, Jahmyr Gibbs.
Agreed on both accounts.
Jameson Williams.
I think that might be my 3 as well. I'd consider like I'd like to get to Tyreek. I'd like to get to Tyreek for that kind of setup. But like I think those are my 3. Actually, I'm probably going Laporta too, if I'm being honest. That means I've got 3 Lions already. But like I think that's fair given their offensive expectations for this one. So I think those are our priorities for this slate are Josh Jacobs, Jahmyr Gibbs, Jameson Williams. What could possibly go wrong making Jameson Williams a priority? That's never done us wrong.
Never, ever, ever.
Any final thoughts for you on this Thanksgiving 3-game slate?
All the defenses are at least 3,500, so you can't really get away with completely punting. I'm going to play a lot of the Cowboys, though, at 41 and figure it out from there.
Same here as well. That is all that we have here for today for this 3-game Thanksgiving slate. We are back with you once again tomorrow, Wednesday, 2 p.m. Eastern on this FanDuel football betting YouTube page, breaking down our thoughts on the Week 13 NFL DFS main slate. Subscribe to the YouTube page there, and also check out the FanDuel Research podcast feed wherever you get your podcast. Thanksgiving betting show already up there. And of course, the NFL Week 13 best bets. I'll go game by game, talk about my models, spread and total predictions over there. That'll be at 10 a.m. Eastern on the YouTube page as well. Brandon, if people have questions for you on the socials, where can they find you there?
I'm on Blue Sky at Gdula.
And I am on both. I'll just call it both now, at JimSannes. You can also find FanDuel Research on X at FanDuel Research. Big thank you to our YouTube producer, Justin Lane, for his work on the video side of things. Thank you, Justin, as always. Thanks all you for tuning in. Enjoy Thanksgiving. Have fun. Have a good time. Eat some good food. Enjoy the football. And hopefully relax a bit as well and just enjoy things, sit back, and hopefully win some money as well. We'll talk to you all again tomorrow to break down the Week 13 NFL DFS main slate. This has been the Heat Check, a FanDuel Research podcast.